My name is Carolyn Frandsen, and I'm the programming coordinator with Support After Abortion. And I'm so excited to be here today to be speaking with you. I want to thank you all for taking the time to stop in and look and watch all of these videos that have been recorded. We are making an impact, and I'm super excited to share my story with you. Today, my story begins. I grew up in a large family. My parents divorced when I was 5 years old. I had to take on extra responsibilities with younger siblings and had to grow up very fast. And I just remember feeling just very unimportant, that everyone else seemed to be so consumed that everything got fallen to me, right? And I felt like I wasn't good enough. Is there something I could have done that things could have been different? Is there something that I could have said or a way I could have acted better? And so I was always seeking that acceptance piece and to feel like I was important. And so that then led into my teen years. And in my teen years, I started hanging out with, the wrong crowd, the people that I definitely shouldn't have been hanging out with, the partiers. I enjoyed being center of attention. And again, trying to seek that acceptance. I realized that I found that I could get attention and acceptance using my body and with members of the opposite sex. And so boys became my main concern. And my goal was to just feel loved. And so I thought I was finding it in them and in those situations and in sex. And so ultimately at 19 years old, I became unexpectedly pregnant. I was in a very unhealthy relationship. We had only been together for 6 months maybe. And I remember when I approached him to tell him that I had taken this test and found out that I was pregnant, his first response to me was, "Well, you're not keeping it, right?" And I remember feeling like, wow. I mean, I think I knew that his reaction wasn't going to be positive, but I think I was really hoping for some kind of support. And so then I realized, wow, this is really up to me, and I have to make this decision. And because he's already made his. And so I then didn't want to tell my family because I didn't want to disappoint them, right? I was always worried about not getting that acceptance and not and failing people was a huge thing that I never wanted to do. And so I then went to Planned Parenthood, and because the test at home, right? I was like, oh, Planned Parenthood's different. I mean, I'm very uneducated. My family didn't talk to me about sex or any of those things. And so I was finding all of that out through my peers and just my experiences. And so then I went to Planned Parenthood thinking that test, I don't know, I think I was thinking maybe it could be a different outcome. Maybe it'll be negative. Mine was wrong. Not knowing that it was the same type of test that I had already taken. And so I got to Planned Parenthood, and the nurse, of course, I took the test, and the nurse comes into the room and she said, yes, it's positive. And her next question to me was, so what are you going to do? And I just remember I didn't even know what to do. I didn't know what to say. And I was so in shock and scared that I know in that now looking back, I was looking for someone to help me, to talk to me. And all I said was, well, I can't be a mom. And she said, okay, and handed me a pamphlet on abortion and where the local abortion clinic was located. And so I remember leaving that appointment and going, I knew I didn't have support from my boyfriend, right? So I knew I just was searching for something. And so I showed up on my older brother's doorstep. And of course, he was in shock, probably nearly as much as I was. And he was young as well, and probably was, I mean, I can't imagine the feelings that he had with me showing up there crying, just this pain on my face of, I don't know what to do. And I obviously went into his home and we talked, and, he was supportive, but I feel like he didn't know what to say. He didn't tell me to have an abortion. He didn't tell me not to. He was just being a listening ear. And ultimately, I told him, I said, this is what I'm going to do. I have to do this. I can't have a baby. I'm not ready for this. And so I went to my first appointment and at the clinic, and I went through. I had an ultrasound. Of course, they didn't let me look at the monitor. Um, but I remember just laying there, just scared. I mean, already crying. I didn't even know what's going on. Um, and then they gave me some kind of counseling. And really, I don't remember much counseling. I remember going into a room with an older woman, her pretty much just asking me if I realized that I was going to be having an abortion, didn't explain really what the procedure was. Um, I had chosen the chemical abortion or a pill form. And she just told me a little bit of what that would consist of, and then asked if I had, decided if this is what I wanted to do. And I was just, I mean, I just like nodded along. I mean, I didn't know. No one was telling me any other option. No one was giving me anything else to go off of. And so I felt completely alone, and I didn't know what to do. And I really felt this was it. This is all anyone's showing me. So this is all I have. This is the only option I have. And my fear took over. Um, and so I went home that day after the counseling session, and I was to come back in a couple days to take my first pill. And so I came back to the clinic. My boyfriend insisted on going with me. I didn't want him to come with, but I think he was afraid that I would change my mind because it had taken me a few days to decide what I was going to do. And I think it took me a few days to really choose because I knew it was wrong. And I didn't really want to have an abortion. I just really felt like it was my only choice at that time. And so I went back to the clinic, and I went upstairs. The doctor's office it was in this odd, like, old house. I don't know how to explain it. And I went up the stairs, and I remember it was just dark and dingy and scary. And I walked up into the office, and there was a doctor's table, and I sat down, and the doctor came in, and he said, "All right, I'm going to give you this first pill. And I need you to take it here in front of me, and I need to check inside your mouth to make sure you swallowed it." And he said, "And before you take this, I just want you to know that once you do swallow this pill and take it, there's no turning back." He said, "This will separate the baby from the uterine wall." I mean, he chose to say, he said fetus. And I said, okay. And again, my boyfriend's sitting right there, and I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at this doctor, and I feel like no one's there for me, right? Like I have to do this. This is it. This is what I'm doing. Ultimately, I did take the pill, and I swallowed it, and he checked inside my mouth, and then he handed me a bag of other pills, and I looked inside, and he said, "Well, there's 4 little pills. Once you get home, you need to insert those vaginally." And then there were some other pills, and I said, "Well, what are these?" And he said, "Oh, well, that is some Vicodin or narcotic for pain." And I said, "Well, you guys told me that it was just going to be a heavy period, that, it wasn't going to be much more than that." And he said, "Oh no, that's about right, but this is just in case." And I remember thinking that was really odd, even at that time. And so I got home. I walked out, got in my car, and I remember driving home and just feeling completely just numb. Like I can't even remember the drive home. And so then I arrived back to my brother's house because I was living with my father at the time, and I didn't want to be home with him, right? I wanted to be somewhere where I could be left alone, and my brother respected my privacy, and he was there for me. Luckily, I had that in case of something bad would have happened. I mean, many women don't even have that. And so I'm grateful that he was there for that. But I arrived home, and 4 hours later inserted the pills. And then I remember laying there, and that's when the pain really started. And now, since I've had 3 children since my abortion, I realized that they were contractions, right? And so they just progressively got worse and worse. And then I went into the bathroom, and I was in so much pain. And I remember I was passing blood, and I was super scared. And at one point, I remember just like crying and pain, thinking this is not like a period. And my brother goes, "Carolyn, you need to take the pain medicine." And at this point, I hadn't even taken it because I don't think I realized in that moment, but I really believe I didn't want to take it because I felt that I deserved it. I felt that I deserved to feel this pain. This was a decision that I made, and I have to live with it and deal with it, because that's kind of how I grew up, right? Like, you made this choice, so you have to deal with that, and you have to deal with whatever comes from that. And so looking back, how scary, right? Like how sad that that's what I was feeling. And so I went into the bathroom. I finally took the pain medicine because I couldn't take it anymore. And I went back into the bathroom because it was still painful and it was getting worse. And so I went back in there, and ultimately there was just so much blood, much more than a bad period. And I sat down on the toilet and ultimately passed my baby and then had to flush it. And I remember in that moment, I'll never forget flushing that toilet. It was that, I can't even put it into words what that felt like. But that was the moment that I think I was like, this is where I'm disconnecting. This is where I'm not going to think about this anymore because I can't. And so I walked out of that bathroom and I went to bed that night. And then after that, it was just like a downhill spiral. I ended up moving away. I think I was just trying to run away from the place that the abortion had occurred. I didn't even want to be anywhere near the town. Of course, my relationship ended, right? I had already, that relationship had ended the moment he said, "You're not going to keep it." I mean, that was, it was over. And so I moved far away, running from my problems, literally. And then I started just this downhill spiral of drugs and drinking, promiscuity, more, not relationships even, but men, just trying to numb that feeling, but not realizing in that moment that I was numbing this abortion decision, because I was still in this mindset that it wasn't, I kept saying it wasn't wrong, right? This is legal. This is something that people do all of the time. This is what society says is the option for an unplanned pregnancy. And so I hadn't even connected that. And so I thought I was just doing normal teen stuff, which now looking back, I'm like, no, that's not even a thing. That what I was doing was covering everything up, was pushing everything down. I was just a runaway. So 2 years after my abortion, I met my now husband, so boyfriend, and we started a relationship. And one thing that he came from that I noticed very different about him in the beginning of our relationship was he came from a family of believers, of followers of Jesus, and I did not grow up in a religious home. However, when we met, neither one of us, him included, were living a godly lifestyle. I would say he had strayed. And so ultimately, 8 months into our relationship, I found out I was pregnant again. And so this is about 2.5 years after my abortion. And so here I was again, faced with this unexpected pregnancy. And I remember thinking, well, I'll just have another abortion. I mean, for me at that time, I still didn't think what I did was wrong, right? I still didn't think I had anything to deal with when it came to my abortion. I just thought, it was over and done with, not realizing everything I'd been doing was because of that, right? It was because, it was impacted. My life was impacted by that decision. And so I went to my boyfriend, now husband, and I said, well, I'm pregnant. And I was bracing for the worst. I was bracing for what I'd already experienced. And so he looks at me and he goes, okay, well, I guess we're going to have a baby. And I was floored and I was just overtaken and I just started bawling. And there was so much relief in knowing that I didn't have to go through that again. But I also didn't even realize that that was what that relief was from. And so fast forward a few months into my pregnancy, right? And because we chose life for our son, and we stayed together. And throughout the entire pregnancy, I remember thinking, everyone talks about how great it is to be pregnant and how, they just really connect with their baby, as a mom and carrying your child. And I never quite got that. I was always like, yeah, I mean, I feel him and it's neat and whatever, but I never really enjoyed my pregnancy. I remember even thinking like, this is horrible. Like, who likes being pregnant? Like, I just don't understand this. And so there was like, that was, now looking back, like, wow, I was so disconnected from this pregnancy, a pregnancy that ultimately we chose and were excited for, eventually once you get over the shock. And I couldn't even really get excited, and I didn't know why. And so then 9 months later, we're at the hospital and I'm delivering my son, And this is about 3 years after my abortion. And so I remember when he was born, my husband was standing over as they were cleaning him off and everything, and they hand him to him, and he goes, "Oh, give him to Carolyn, give him to his mom." And I mean, it was just complete and utter, like I just said no. I said I can't. You hold him. Let everyone else hold him. I don't want to hold him right now. Who doesn't want to hold their firstborn child? I couldn't understand why I was feeling that way. What was going on? This was supposed to be the most exciting day of my life. That's what everybody says. And yes, it was exciting and I loved my son, but it was also one of the saddest because it was the first time that I fully faced my abortion decision 3 years prior. All that running, all that shoving down of feelings, all of that numbing, all of the drugs, drinking, all of it was just trying to escape the pain that I'd been feeling. But when I had to look into the face of my child for the first time, I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I couldn't listen to society. I had to look at him and realize this is what I did. This is what I threw away. And so for me, that was really hard to enjoy the day that he was born. It was even once I took him home. I mean, there was a disconnect. There was I don't feel like I should even really deserve this. I don't deserve to have a child. Look what I threw away. And now I'm here and I have to take care of this child. Why do I deserve this? I shouldn't be happy. I shouldn't feel this way. And I didn't know that was what it was in those moments, but it caused a distance between me and my children. Because not only was it like that when my son was born, there was also a disconnect when my daughter was born 2 years later, and then ultimately when my third child, my second daughter, was born, 5 years later. And so each time it was exciting to be having another baby. I love my children. I really want you to hear that. But every time that they were born, there was a sadness. There was this underlying guilt and shame and anger and just pain. And so once my third child was born, I had started going to church after my son was born, and my husband brought me to the Lord, and his family shared the love of Jesus with me. And so I began that relationship with God. And it took a few years, but fast forward 3 kids later, I'm sitting in church and I'm listening, and they're talking about this place, a pregnancy center, and I kind of got like a feeling inside of, oh, I should find out more about that, but still fear is a strong thing, and so I didn't. And I became really, really great friends with someone through my church. It happens to be Lisa Rowe, our executive director, and she's a dear, dear friend of mine. And I shared with her. She was one of the first outside of my husband and obviously my brother and then boyfriend that I had shared that I had had an abortion. And after I shared that story with her, she said, "You know what? I know this place called Pregnancy Solutions, and they have a program called Support After Abortion." And I was like, "Well, I don't need that. I mean, I'm fine. I don't need healing. I don't even know what that means. I don't really care to do that." And so she dropped it and respected that. And a few months later, we were sitting there and it came up again. And because she loves me and wants, she could see the underlying pain that I still had, she brought it up again. And in that moment, God really spoke to me and said, "You should give this a shot. You should really try this." And so I said, "Fine, I'll go." And so I joined this healing group with other women that had had abortions. And I remember walking in to, I was at the pregnancy center, and I walked in, and Karen Barbito was the facilitator of my group. And I walked in thinking, this is a waste of time. I don't need this. I'm fine. I've been dealing with it for 10 years now. And look, I'm okay. I have 3 kids and a husband, and I'm doing great. Like, I look great from the outside. And that's just it. I was great on the outside. And after leaving my first group, I walked out of there thinking, wow, I am not okay. There is so many underlying issues that I'm dealing with that I didn't even realize were there. And one of the biggest ones for me, and one of my biggest realizations through my healing group, right, the 8 or 12 weeks that I was in it, was the disconnect I had from my children. I wasn't able to give them my all because I didn't even know that I was even missing anything. I wasn't able to be the best version of myself for my children. And that was a hard pill to swallow, right? It wasn't something I wanted to admit, that I really wasn't being a good mom. I wasn't even able to enjoy hugging my children. Like, affection was not something that I was good at. And I think it's because, again, it goes back to that I don't deserve to do this. How am I enjoying this, knowing that I took the life of my first child? Why do I get to love on and care for and grow these other children here on earth? And I was punishing myself, which then ultimately punished my children, right? I wasn't able, to teach them what a really healthy, loving mother looks like. And I know that sounds sad and kind of depressing, but there's such a bright side to this. So once I was able to realize that, right, and then also be taught and learn tools of how to deal with all these underlying feelings, the shame, guilt, anger, all of those things, through my healing journey, through my healing groups, it's not even just the group itself, it's the women that were in there with me. I mean, this was the first time that I sat somewhere and listened to other people that had experienced the exact same thing that I've experienced. Yes, it was different, not perfectly the same, but guess what? They had similar feelings that I had. They had similar disappointments, sadness, pains. I mean, even though, yes, I shouldn't have said our experiences were exactly the same, because they weren't, but there were so many things that were exactly the same. And that was groundbreaking. That was something that I want every single woman or man that has walked through an abortion experience, to be able to sit in a room with other women or other men that have also experienced a similar situation, and be able to be like, wow, they really get me. They really understand what I'm saying, and I don't feel crazy or unworthy or undeserving. I mean, this is where the breakthroughs happened for me. We're in these groups and being able to realize, like, hey, guess what? Even though I wasn't the best mom over the last, 6+ years, I can be now. I can make the changes now with the help of not just the group, but I'm saying with the help of God and the work that He did inside of me. Like, I was sitting in a room with other believers as well, and being able to discuss our relationship with God and being able to build that. I have been able to really find freedom and really understand that I do deserve and I am worthy to be a mom, to enjoy my children and fully enjoy them. I mean, just this past Mother's Day was the first Mother's Day that I think I really let myself enjoy being a mom. And I felt like I truly deserved to enjoy being a mom. And I'm not just a mom to my three Earthside kids. I have the joy and understanding and promise that I'll get to be with my heavenly daughter someday. And that's all because of this journey I've been on. It hasn't been easy. It hasn't all been sunshine and rainbows, but it's been life-changing. It's been freedom. It's been love. And so I encourage anyone who is out there, who is feeling, maybe you feel and understand this disconnect that I've experienced. Maybe you understand that feeling of being alone, or you understand that feeling of not being enough. I want you to know, and I want to encourage you, that you are. You are enough. And there are people that want to help you, and there are people that understand you. And you can find freedom. So please, reach out to support after abortion. go to our website, supportafterabortion.com. We can help you, and we want to help you. If I can do it, and if I can find this freedom, I know you can. Thank you all for listening, and have a great day.